that?
Mhm.
I like my sunflower making for you,
Yeah.
and my sunflower has pictures inside.
Yeah.
The pictures are the seeds.
Oh, okay. That's a good picture. What are you drawing, James?
Sunflower.
A sunflower too? Good. Rachel's eating candy. Hope's cleaning up. Was it good? Did you like it?
Yeah.
Good. Do you want some more?
There's a nut in here. They put a nut in here which makes it really good.
Maybe this will be better to keep you.
No, I can taste like there's a nut in here.
Maybe it being liquid or something. Okay, Becky's lounging on the couch like a sloth. And Jesse's in his corner because we're babysitting Jesse. And Ben, is he on his bed? Ben's on his bed and who knows where Jack is. How's the guinea pig doing?
Yeah, right. He's probably trying to sleep as much as he can because he only sleeps 1 hour.
No, he sleeps during the day lots more. Whatever. Okay, this book is called Ellis Island. Okay, Ellis Island. Island of Hope. It was New Year's Day in 1892. Annie Moore took her 2 little brothers' hands. They walked onto the dock at Ellis Island, New York. A government building on the island had just opened. There, workers would decide whether to let them into the United States. Annie and her brothers were immigrants. Listen up. They had come from another country and were looking for a life in America. So this is not like a tropical island, is it? What is an island anyway, James?
A ground or place in the water.
That's right. It's just a piece of land all surrounded by water. And this one is like a city where people have to go before they can go to a regular part of America. They kind of have to all file through here, and the government lets them know if they can come in. They won't let any people who are sick in, not if they're really, really contagious and have a really bad disease. If they had a little cold or something, they would probably let them in.
Yeah,
Okay.
because we have colds here.
Yeah. Annie would be the first to walk through the building's doors. Over the next 30 years, millions would follow.
That's millions.
This is a statue of Annie Moore and her brothers stands in Cobh, Ireland. Annie Moore and her 2 little brothers. So she's the first one to go through, I guess. Annie's $10 gold piece would be worth about $200 today. But that's probably all she had. So, I mean, $200 isn't very much when it's all you have, but let's read the story. 17-year-old Annie had sailed across the Atlantic Ocean from her home in Ireland. She and her brothers made the trip alone. Their parents had moved to New York City 2 years earlier. Oh my goodness. So they had to leave her behind and her 2 little brothers. Maybe they stayed with relatives or something. Anyway, so she had to make that whole trip with her 2 little brothers all by herself. Her parents must have really missed them for 2 years, huh? They had saved up the money to pay for their children's trips. So the parents went first so they could work and earn the money to get the rest. Sometimes that's the only way they could do it. Officials looked over the kids and said that Annie and her brothers could enter America. Because Annie was the first immigrant to arrive in Ellis Island, one official gave her a $10 gold piece. It was the most money Annie had ever had. Okay, so it was a gift. That's awesome.
That's
So before then, they didn't handle immigration the same way. I think people just hopped off the boat. But that could mean that they could bring in a plague or something from Europe and make all kinds of Americans sick. They already had plenty of people dying from disease, so they're trying to halt that, and they were trying to, keep it legal. What, sweetie?
like if they had a different disease.
Yeah, from us, anything we had.
Yeah. And we didn't have it at all.
Mm-hmm.
It would just get worse.
Like, remember how some people gave the Indians, they got smallpox and it killed a whole bunch of the Indians.
And now smallpox obliterated.
Yeah. Yep. A lot of those diseases are obliterated. From 1892, listen, Angel, to 1924, Ellis Island served as the main gateway to America. As each steamship chugged into New York Harbor, immigrants saw the Statue of Liberty. To them, the statue stood for the freedom they wanted so badly. So they would look from the ship, see all those people. What are they looking at? They're looking at the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
There she is, they'd say. Liberty statue. In the late 1800s to early 1900s, life in Europe was very difficult. Many people were forced to leave their homelands. In some places, you could be jailed or killed for practicing a certain religion or speaking out against the government. Food and jobs were hard to find. Many immigrants believed that America offered the best chance for a better life. Freedom of religion, you get freedom of speech. And there were jobs, there were factories hiring people.
And you would be free from some diseases that were really bad.
Maybe, yeah. We saw the Statue of Liberty and Mother said to me, that means we're free. Margaret Wordle arrived from Hungary at age 7. Immigrants from Europe had to cross the Atlantic to reach America. During Ellis Island's busiest years, Americans came on steamships. The voyage lasted about 12 days, so almost 2 weeks. Most steamship passengers traveled in steerage. These tickets were the cheapest, but in steerage, it was uncomfortable and dangerous. Listen, honey. No fresh air reached that part of the ship. It was like underneath. Hundreds of people were packed into crowded bunks. The vomit of seasick passengers covered the floor. Sounds like the Mayflower, only the Mayflower was way longer than 12 days. Yeah. Remember, it was months.
So without our relatives,
You can get pretty sick in 12 days, though, huh?
so without our relatives on the Mayflower, we would have never gotten to America. Right?
Well, one of our ancestors wouldn't have made it anyway, yeah. Only one of our ancestors was on the Mayflower. Or, I guess it could have been one or two. I'm not really sure who she married, so, yeah. Okay, I guess one, I think. Anyway, it's weird to think, well, if my ancestor from like hundreds of years ago didn't marry that person that they married, I wouldn't have been born. Well, you know what I think? I think God wants you to be born, you're born. And I don't think if God wanted me to have an ancestor with red hair so that I'd have red hair, he'd make it that way. Or he'd just make me have red hair. God is God, and he does things the way he wants.
Mom,
And I don't worry about it. What?
I think your hair needs to be
It
dyed
does.
red again.
It does, yep. Okay. All right. Most immigrants couldn't wait to arrive in America and get off the ship. This drawing shows the steerage passengers on their way to America. See how crowded it is? Guys? Really crowded.
Yeah.
While most immigrants from Asia entered the United States on the west coast, so the Chinese people came to the Pacific Ocean, okay? A few did come through Ellis Island. The percentages of people from different areas of the world are rounded. That's why some of the percentages not equal 100%. Okay, so 59% of immigrants came from Europe. Well, came from East Europe, or West Europe. 33% came from East Europe, so like Russia, stuff like that, okay? And 6% came from South America. And they forgot to write the percentage that came from Asia. That's weird.
Guess none of them came then.
No, it just talked about them. It just doesn't say how many. That's really weird. Okay. Gull Island. Immigrants may not have known it, but the little island that they were arriving on had a long history. Hundreds of years ago, the island barely peeked out above the water during the high tides. The Lenape Indians called it Kiosk, which means Gull Island. Only seagulls live there. If the waters get that high, nobody wants to live there, not permanently, wait, just a minute. In 1624, the Dutch arrived at what is now called New York City. They called the little island Little Oyster Island for the oysters they harvested from its shore. This is an illustration of the Dutch buying Manhattan Island, New York, from the Lenape Native Indians in 1626. And that was a good plan, just to buy the island from the Indians, if they can understand that. because then they're not going to fight you if you bought it from them and everybody understands. One of the earliest paintings of New York Harbor. This is sure different now. It's got high-rise buildings and stuff now.
I don't know how to write Washington.
W-A. James, that's a good picture. So W-A.
You can just write W-A.
S. Yeah, you can just abbreviate it W-A. Want to just do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Many years later, New York became a British colony. In 1774, right before the Revolutionary War, an American businessman named Samuel Ellis bought the little island. Ellis named the island after himself. A colony is an area controlled by people living in another country. So I'm going to be asking you that again at the end of the book. Okay. New York was one of the 13 American colonies controlled by the British. The Revolutionary War was the war between the colonies and the British. Okay. The colonists wanted to be free from British control.
Yeah.
And inspected means looked over carefully. Okay? The U.S. government took over Ellis Island in 1808 and built a small fort. After that, the island was used mainly to store gunpowder. So they used it for protection. That's a good idea. It wasn't until 1890 that the officials decided to build an immigration station on Ellis Island. Some people thought it was best to keep immigrants off the mainland while they were inspected. Then they could enter America. I think that was reasonable because it keeps the contagious people away. I do feel really, really sorry for anybody who appeared to be contagious but just had the flu or was seasick or something like that. I'm not sure, but there may have been some people turned away. If there were people turned away like that, I felt really bad for them because they had to go all the way back. And then their fare was wasted and they went that big old trip for nothing and they got sick for nothing. It was just like probably anybody who arrived on that island sick who wasn't, everybody's going to be a little seasick and, just from catching germs and stuff and then just from the boat. Anyway, I'm rambling. Okay. In the late 1800s, workers dumped tons of dirt and rock from subway tunnels onto Ellis Island to make it bigger. So we had all this extra dirt from the subway tunnels they were building. Subway's like a train underground. I didn't know that they had that already back then. Subways are old. Okay. So, stairs of separation. After going through inspection, immigrants came to a staircase in the main building. It was divided into 3 aisles. So we go to this island and see it's like a big city on the island. The whole city you can't even see the dirt, can you?
Yeah.
Okay. So they would go into the city to be, to qualify for coming in. The main building. Doctors and inspectors checked millions of immigrants in these halls. They were looking for signs of disease or any other reasons that an immigrant could be too dangerous to allow in the country. Hospital. Sick immigrants received treatment here before being allowed into the United States. So it sounds like maybe some of them were able to stay in the hospital for a while, just get better and then go. But I've heard of people who got turned away. Yeah, and they never saw their siblings again and stuff. It's sad. Baggage and dormitories. Some immigrants didn't get permission to enter the United States right away. They had to drop off their bags and head to the dormitories where many slept in bunk beds. So that's the big building in the back.
So kind of like in the playhouse where
Yeah.
bunk bench.
Yeah. The cafeteria. Ellis Island cooks prepared and served meals for immigrants while they waited on the island. That's good.
Okay, I did most of the...
See, this is immigrants carrying their belongings.
So if we were doing that and I got turned away, would you guys all come with me?
Somebody, I heard a story once, and I don't remember if this is a true story or not, but yeah, the family was coming in, and one of the children was too sick to go and had to go back. And so it was the mother or the father went back, and the other one, I think the father stayed and the mother went back. And they didn't ever see their mother again. And then the sister, they didn't see it again until she was like 30 years old. They were all grown up. But I think that was just a made-up movie, so I don't know if it's true or not. Let's find out. Imagine it. You arrived in a new country after a hard trip. You have little more than the money in your pockets and a few of your most precious belongings. People wearing uniforms poke you, inspect you, and ask you questions. It's like taking a difficult test that you just hope to pass. Most passengers had to wait a long time in the immigration process at Ellis Island. At best, they were allowed to enter the United States. At worst, they were sent back to the countries from which they came. This is an immigrant Hungarian family. Those girls are really cute. The mom's really pretty too, without any makeup or anything. The little baby's wearing like a shawl. See? They're all wearing shawls. And you see people wearing those today sometimes when you go to the grocery stores. Well, you might want to get a little closer, Rach. You might want to get closer. The things on their heads, honey. Okay. Once inside the main building on Ellis Island, immigrants climbed a steep staircase. Doctors watched their every move. If people appeared sick or disabled, they were pulled away from their families and given a full medical exam. So most of them just kind of walked past the people and they went, oh, you hope you look pretty. You look healthy kid, healthy kid, healthy kid, healthy kid. And then they'd see somebody like, barely able to walk. And they'd be like, oh, medical exam.
What if they just had a broken leg?
Well, they know if they just had a broken leg, they'd be like, oh, you just had a broken leg, it's fine. And then they'd let him in. Doctors checked immigrants for an infection that causes blindness. This is common in Europe, but not in the United States. See, here they're checking their eyes. Just real quick,
So why won't they let them in if they're blind?
Well, they said, it doesn't say they're blind. It said an infection that causes blindness. So they might not be blind yet, but they might get blind, or they might just get the infection and maybe get blind. Okay. So the doctors turned the immigrants' eyelids inside out with a tool called a button hook. People who showed signs of infection were sent back to their home countries. Yuck. I don't think I'd be able to let somebody... What's that?
Hot sausages.
Oh, for tomorrow. Okay.
Sausage!
Oh, good.
Sausage!
Yep, tomorrow.
Yeah.
The next...
Well, they're spicy ones.
I don't care.
Okay.
They're really spicy.
Just give them a little piece. The next stop was a huge registry room. Here, people waited to answer questions from other inspectors. Interpreters reworded the inspectors' questions into the immigrants' home languages. An interpreter is a person who puts one language into another language, right?
Like they translated the Bible?
Blue is blue into azul, yeah. The Bible was translated into English because it wasn't written in English, huh? The inspectors asked, "How old are you?"
6.
6. Are you married?
No. Ouch.
What's your job or trade, Rachel? I am a kid.
I'm a kid.
They wanted to make sure the immigrants' answers matched the information on the ship's records. They also asked questions about right and wrong behavior. They hoped to spot likely criminals. I don't know how they would decide you're a criminal. That seems so biased. This inspection took only a few minutes. Most immigrants passed. The reward? A landing card that officially allowed them to enter the United States. Angel, shh.
Nothing else? Okay.
Cool facts about Ellis Island. Yeah. Do you ever rob banks? No. Okay, you're good to go. What's your profession? Not a criminal. Oh, good. You're. I don't know what that. More than 40% of Americans today can trace their roots back to one or more people who came through Ellis Island. You should ask Papa, but I bet you some are on YouTube. During its busiest years, Ellis Island had 5,000 immigrants pass through it per day. Actually, I think most of our ancestors might have been before Ellis Island, actually. Fiorello LaGuardia worked as an interpreter on Ellis Island for 3 years. He later served as a U.S. congressman and then mayor of New York City. More U.S. island immigrants came from Italy than any other country. I didn't know that. How funny. So Italians. Made completely of wood, the original Ellis Island buildings caught on fire in June 1897. They burned to the ground in 6 hours. Wow.
That's one day.
Wow.
I think I had that fire going outside for about 2 or 3 hours. I mean, not that much longer than that. Those were some very flammable buildings.
Yeah, that's like, it's even worse than the
Yeah, and they're so close together, and they didn't have fire engines the same way we do, and
the so-called fireproof buildings back then were just normal wood buildings with like a slab of
concrete.
concrete or marble on them, but they could still catch on fire.
Just, yeah. Okay, less than 2% of the 2 million people who passed through Ellis Island's doors failed inspection. Okay, so I'm glad it's a small percentage. They were sent back to their home countries. Still a lot of people, though. I mean, 1% of 12 million people. See, this is 2%. Really, what's 1% of 12 million? That's, I can't think straight. But anyway, 120,000, right? So 240,000 people, right? No, that's 10%. 24,000 people. 24,000 people had to go back. Wow.
Go back where?
Okay, to their home countries because they were too sick to go, or they decided they were criminals. Trouble upon arrival. What happened when immigrants didn't pass inspection right away? Sick immigrants went to the island's hospital for care. Sometimes people who didn't pass the first round of questions were held for more questioning. Women traveling alone were not allowed to leave Ellis Island until a relative came to meet them. Oh, they didn't want... I mean, I think I understand that. I mean, nowadays they'd say that's sexist. But back then, they didn't want these women to just go and start living in the streets and become, criminals because they didn't have jobs or anybody to take care of them. And it's a little bit harder to find a job maybe when you're a woman.
Yeah,
You don't qualify. Although there were a lot of servant jobs and stuff. Women are weaker and they're just trying to take care of them. So anyway, a relative, they had relatives in the city. They came and got them from Ellis to make sure they're okay. All right. This is a woman who's waiting at Ellis Island for her relative. She's got a big basket instead of a suitcase. See, she probably made all her own clothes. And probably, maybe she even made that basket.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing about shawls is that you can make shawls. You can make the headgear and stuff. You can make a dress. You can't make jeans and a jacket usually, or hats and things like that,
You would
caps
have to
and
have-
suitcases.
Cotton mills might work
learn
for
how to
the
do
jackets,
that.
like inside them.
Some
and then
people do.
You still can string on.
But it's just really it's a real skill to make a jacket. You're right. Some people can do it, but most normal sewers can't.
Like
Especially by hand and stuff. But she can make her own shawl. She can she can do those things. Okay, this is a dormitory for women and children at Ellis Island. Oh, that's crowded. Looks like an orphanage. This photo shows a dining hall in 1907. These immigrants are waiting to be allowed entrance into America. I think they had to pay for all those things, though. I think some people probably just didn't eat much. Brought
they
their own
had
food
to
with
drink.
them. Yeah, they had to drink, but they would have had water for free, probably. This fenced area on the roof of the main building held immigrants who were being deported. That means going back. Deported means going back. I hate to see people have to go back, but they had to have some rules. And you know what? I think they were upfront about them before they left. So, yeah. We had issues where, people got deported here recently, too. But, they knew we were getting a new president and things were changing. So, I don't know. It's about how we feel about things. But we have to protect our borders. You wouldn't want a bunch of people with disease coming in or problems,
Yeah.
But a small number ended up, for a while officials allowed most immigrants into America, but a small number ended up being deported. Usually such people didn't have enough money to try to move to America again. For them, their dreams of living in America were over. Words to know, deported means sent back to the country from whence the person came. Many people believe that inspectors changed their family's last name when their ancestors arrived at Ellis Island, but that didn't happen. Instead, the inspectors at Ellis Island were most concerned about making sure immigrants' names matched the ship's records. They didn't care about spellings. The inspectors worked closely with interpreters who spoke an average of 6 languages. Interpreters tried to make sure there were no misunderstandings between inspectors and immigrants. So why did some name changes happen? It was common for immigrants to change their names themselves after arriving in the U.S. They often did this to make their names sound more American or to fit in with the local community.
Well, that's kind of,
Yeah,
I feel it's a little silly.
yeah.
Your parents named you for a reason. Why not keep the name?
I know, it's a history. I think they were just, their old country just made them so worn out and tired and sick. You know, they kind of wanted to be rid of that, you know. And if your name was like unpronounceable, like some of the Russian names, I can see that. You know, Russian names are so hard to pronounce sometimes.
Yeah.
But you know, like the Hilliard, you remember the story with Hilliard? Like, it's spelled different in the book, and the answer where you go way, way back because they didn't always know how to spell their own name because they didn't write. They don't know how to write or read.
Yeah.
So who were they to say how the name Hilliard was spelled? And so, you know, whoever rocked him in, you know, brought him in. It wasn't Ellis Island back then. It was earlier than that. But, you know, spelled it one way and it was another way. Finally settled on one way and kept it after people were all literate. Literate means you can read, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, in Ireland it gets really confusing because you got all those mix. But then you all got Mackie. So, I mean, we're probably related to the McKees. Mackie, McKee, pretty close. You know? And there's Mackie with an AY and Mackie with an EY. Probably related to them too. Groups of people often helped Ellis Island immigrants in need. They brought warm clothes, food, music, and treats, especially for the children. This is a volunteer who's giving donuts to the immigrants at Ellis Island in 1920. Oh, that would taste really good.
Oh.
Right after you've been on that ship with all that yuckiness going on, you finally get cleaned up, and then you get a donut. You're like, this is my first day in America. I love America. You guys would talk about that for the rest of your lives. They gave us donuts. Those are homemade donuts, huh?
We were born.
Yeah, you were born in
When
America,
we
huh?
made homemade donuts, they tasted really good.
You didn't like them. That's really, you know what? They were probably better at making donuts. Okay, listen. About 350 babies were born in Ellis Island. So a lot of women came that were really, really pregnant. They didn't make a big deal about being pregnant. People were pregnant a lot back then. A lot of babies died. A lot of people had big families. And you just couldn't put off the trip because you were pregnant because you might be pregnant again next year too. You know?
Yeah.
So you had to just go with the flow. All right. Groups of people often helped Ellis Island. Okay. Oh, wait. One of the best known helpers. Oh, also though, some men weren't very thoughtful of their wives. Men are more thoughtful about pregnancies now than they used to be. One of the most known helpers was Ludmila Kutcher Foxley. She immigrated to the United States when she was 4 years old. She knew what the immigrants were going through. Foxley kept detailed records and worked with a large number of immigrants.
She was Angel's age then.
She organized holiday parties and other festivals to cheer up the immigrants held on the island. Here's some immigrant children playing. These must be rich kids because they didn't all have toys with them. Most of them did not bring any toys with them at all. Maybe just a little rag doll or something. Maybe not even that. Beyond Ellis Island. Immigrants' experiences on Ellis Island were only the beginning. Landing, Angel, no. You need to be appropriate. Landing cards in hand, they set out to begin lives in America. Some immigrants stayed in New York City. Many traveled to places where they had family and friends who had immigrated earlier. They looked for jobs and places to live. This is a photo from 1900 showing immigrants in Manhattan, New York. They've colorized this picture.
Colorized.
Yeah. Crowded, huh? There's still horse-drawn carriages and people in the streets. It's almost when I'm done. And then it's going to be time for bed. Many immigrants flocked to parts of the country that were growing. Sometimes immigrants filled entire communities. So the whole community would be immigrants. Might even be immigrants all from basically the same country, like Scandinavia or something like that. Polish, is amazing. There's so many people coming in from those countries.
I wonder if
It was natural for them to go together.
I wonder if polio's from Poland.
No, polio is not from Poland. It's been around. So I mean, if you think about it, let's say if we lived somewhere and all of our family lived somewhere that had gotten really awful, we would talk about moving, right? So would Pat and Helen and Uncle Shane and Aunt Susan and Papa Earl, Grandma Lou and Papa, Grandma Lori and Papa Mike, and everybody would be talking about leaving, right? And somebody would be the first one to go, and then they'd be like, "It's okay, we got a good spot here. You come and be with us. I got a job I know where you can get to work at a factory, or I know you can get work helping with a railroad." And then they'd come, and then they'd send, get their relatives to come too, and you'd tell your boss, my family's coming. They're really hard workers. And they'd be like, "Oh, if they're hard workers like you, I'll hire them." And pretty soon you just got this whole network of people.
Mommy.
Yeah.
So, is this your 39th Mother's Day?
I guess so. Okay. Common jobs from immigrants included working at mills or factories, working as loggers, or building railroads. Making an impact. The United States would be a very different place without immigrants. From food to music to sports, immigrants have shaped the American way of life. As immigrants poured into the country through Ellis Island and other immigration centers, America became known as the melting pot. This means that America was a place where cultures mixed freely. So Italians, Polish people, Irish people, they did fill whole communities, but gradually we all mixed, didn't we? And most of us are a mix of a bunch of different European countries.
Yeah.
We've got Irish, Scottish, British, German,
Kids yours
probably Spanish. Italian.
that their dad is black skinned, so in the summer their skin turns more of a tannish color.
Oh, I remember them saying something about that. Yeah, I don't know what the story is behind that. They're very pale-skinned kids. But yeah, they're a melting pot too, huh? Okay. This is male Hindu and Parsi immigrants from India at Ellis Island. People from India. India.
Which picture?
You're welcome to come closer so I can show you, Rach. These are immigrants from the Ukraine or Russia. Rachel. Right here. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, this is a Jewish immigrant from Armenia. Here's the Jewish one, the Russians, and this is the Indians. It's funny, we have people from all these countries still coming in as immigrants years later, but they don't dress the same anymore. These are the old-fashioned way they dressed in those countries, and now they dress differently. Look at the funny mustache on the Russians. Yeah, this is a woman from Finland. Look at that fancy skirt she's wearing.
Yeah. Mommy, I want to see you.
Well, come see. And this is a family from Germany. Look at all those kids. Just a minute. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1 girl and 8 boys.
Let me see.
1 girl, the old girl is the oldest, and the rest are boys.
like,
Becky, why would you like that?
It's like
You, James, but only a girl.
8, 9, 10.
Well, okay. Well, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Excuse me, 8 kids and a mom and a dad. I miscounted. But the oldest is a girl. Yeah. See, or at least the tallest is a girl.
I thought you said it was 9.
Well, I miscounted. A few of the immigrants who passed through Ellis Island. Meet a few of the immigrants who passed through Ellis Island. They and many others went on to accomplish great things. Colette Colbert was a Broadway actress and film star. When she was 8, she and her family moved from France to New York, coming through Ellis Island in 1911. Just a minute. Let's finish this before answering questions, okay? Songwriter Irving Berlin came to the United States through Ellis Island in 1893. James, I have to finish the story. I can't answer a question right now, okay? He went on to write, God bless America. Land that I love, and many other popular songs. I think he's Jewish. Abraham Beam was a baby when he came through. His family came through Ellis Island in 1906. They came from London to join Beam's father in New York City. Beam later served as the city's mayor from 1974 to 1977. That is pretty cool how you can come to this country as an immigrant and, 70 years later be the mayor. But I mean, I didn't say 5 years later. I didn't say 1 year later. 70 years later, 65, something like that. Yeah, it was almost 70 years, 68 years later. So, he was a little kid. He learned how to be American first. And Rome wasn't built in a day, can't do everything immediately. Harry Houdini, the magician, right?
Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
Immigrated to the United States from Hungary in 1878. That was 100 years before I was born. Houdini became a world-famous magician and stuntman. He passed through Ellis Island in 1914 after performing magic shows in Europe. He was a U.S. citizen by that time, but the island was still served as the entry point for most people arriving in New York by ship.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not quite sure if this is true, but I remember hearing in
Mommy.
Magic Treehouse audiobook that
Oh,
they wear these big fancy hats and glasses to keep them disguised from the rest because
yeah.
there'd be mobs of people
Oh, I bet. Yeah, trying to punch him, see if he could survive it, because he had that gag. Yeah, he could get beat up. A deserted village. In the 1920s, the United States passed laws that limited the number of immigrants who were allowed into the country. Yeah, because for a while we were just growing and growing and growing, and, it just changed, I guess. Fewer and fewer people passed through the once busy island. One worker at the time compared the island to a deserted village. In the 1940s, U.S. government used the island for a different purpose. It became a prison to hold people accused of siding with America's enemies during World War II. After the war, only a few dozen immigrants came through Ellis Island each year. A few dozen, that'd be 24, wow. Ellis Island closed for good in 1954. Yeah, it's kind of not worth keeping for just 24 immigrants. Can I what? Can I what?
Can you
After we're done. Don't ask me any more questions till I'm done, okay? This is a man in his sleeping quarters. He was held at Ellis Island around 1943. Oh, he's in prison, I guess? View of the recreation fields in Ellis Island around 1943. Maybe it was just, doesn't really look like prison, so maybe it was held for a different reason. Restoring a monument. This is, oh, look at all the dust. This room was used as a hospital ward. Below is what it looked like when it was in use. So they took all the beds back out, huh? Once Ellis Island shut down, its buildings fell to ruin. President Lyndon Johnson named Ellis a national monument back in 1965, but no money was spent on fixing it up. Finally, in the 1980s, a group called the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation worked to raise money to restore the site. The work cost $160 million. Oh, what the heck? That was not good. That's way too much money to spend on restoring a bunch of old buildings. The work cost $160 million. At that time, the project was most expensive of its kind. When the main building was finished, it looked similar to the way it did long ago, and cost a fraction of the. In his own words, I wanted to be an American. I wanted to make the most of my opportunities, and I did just that. Charles Belair arrived from Russia at 86. What if they took that $160 million and helped people who are already immigrants, or helped the descendants of immigrants maybe get to college, or, down payment on a house, just food. I don't know. Or just don't spend the money at all.
What is this place?
That was remember I just said, this room was used as a hospital ward. Below is what it looked like when it was in use. Okay? Okay. On September 10, 1990, Ellis Island opened as a museum. Today, more than 2 million people visit each year. The exhibit tells the story of U.S. immigration. Some people go to learn more about when their ancestors came to America. In these halls, visitors learn about the brave people who risked so much for a chance at a better life. This began their journey as immigrants. At that time, they called themselves Americans. If I think if it were up to me, I would look into what it would cost just to make everything safe for people to come to and then maybe put a small museum in, because people would go there just to look at all those old buildings, But yeah, you can't have them like falling down on people and stuff. And that wouldn't cost 160 million, I doubt. But
Yeah.
I would look into that as a possibility.
That is a fancy
Maybe the reason it cost so much was because they were
building.
absolutely falling down, though. I don't know.
That's a fancy building.
It's a view of the main building on Ellis Island today. It's a really cool building. You can see why it's expensive, because it looks like a mansion, like a castle, isn't it?
There are some really, really pretty buildings out there that are just abandoned, and nobody's done anything to them.
I know, yeah.
Didn't-
Because it's expensive, and you can't always be used for something practical. So let's read what he read. This Charles Beller. Okay, he's only 6 years old. James, come here. This is what a little 6-year-old boy said. This little 6-year-old boy wasn't an American yet. He's from another country that was really sad and poor and hard. He said, "I wanted to be an American." That sounds like something you would say, James. I wanted to be American. I wanted to make the most of my opportunities. You know what that means?
a little-
That means that if you have the opportunity to work for money, you take it. That's an opportunity. You have an opportunity to go to church, you do it, right? Because that's a good thing. You take your opportunities and then do good things from them. Huh. You work, you make money. Yeah, that's right.
He sounds.
He says, I wanted to make the most of my opportunities, and I did just that. I don't know who Charles Beller is. Probably somebody famous, I don't know. From Russia.
He kind of sounds like one of those kids on a Lemony Snicket's.
Yeah, well, he's putting it in adult words. But anyway, okay, you can go to bed now. You can go to bed. I'll talk to you in a second. Oh, Becky, can you clip his toenail or his fingernail, please? Thanks. It's funny because we as Americans sometimes we don't take our opportunities anymore. Sometimes people don't. They hear about a job and they say, "I don't want to work at McDonald's." Even when they need a job, they say that, or as if it's not good enough for them somehow.
Can you make a lot of money at McDonald's?
No, it's a minimum wage job. It's like a lot of other jobs. And if you can find a different job, then you don't have to work there. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's really not that bad. People just kind of they get kind of snooty about it. They think that because there are so many other people who work at McDonald's that they don't want to do that because they want to do something different. And maybe you can. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to work there. But there are lots of people who don't have jobs at all that could have one if they just tried at McDonald's, because McDonald's hires lots of people. Or Walmart, for that matter.
What kind
Or
of
grocery stores.
restaurant does get lots of money?
You only get lots of money at a restaurant if you're the top manager, okay, salaried manager, or if you are a waitress or some other tipped person, like pizza delivery, where you make tips. Because restaurants nearly always pay minimum wage. They might pay a little bit more to the cook, and chefs make more money. But salaried means that you don't get paid by the hour, you get paid by the month or whatever. Okay? And they can make you work basically any amount of hours that they want to. I mean, they'll have some kind of maximum, but so restaurant managers usually wind up working about 70 hours a week. You know how many hours Daddy works a week? 40. So it's almost twice. They have to work almost twice as much as Daddy. So that's only for people who really enjoy working at restaurants. I mean, it's not good for family life. Not good for married life. So, I mean, if you're single, that's another thing. You want to just live at your job, And then it does pay more, but it's still not, I mean, it's like, it pays more than a lot of jobs. But it doesn't pay as much as like being a doctor by any means. You know, it pays about as much as being a teacher, I think. Maybe a little bit more because sometimes they make bonuses. And
I'd
it
rather
depends
be
on
a
which
teacher,
restaurant you work
though.
at, obviously.
I thought teachers got like paid a good amount.
They do. Like I said, a restaurant manager gets paid.
Oh, you're
Good.
talking about restaurant managers.
Yeah.
I thought you were still talking
No,
about
I was talking about a restaurant manager. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the regular workers like at McDonald's who don't get tips and stuff, they make minimum wage. Minimum wage is really high right now, but minimum wage is the lowest that anyone can pay you. So it is the poorest smallest amount of money you can make. So it's like you just keep that in mind. It's a lot more than you make, like, you know, mowing lawns for the neighbors or something or babysitting. But it's a lot more than that. But it's about the worst you can do. But it's okay. I mean, it's an opportunity. You got to start somewhere, right? You're not going to get a job where you get tipped the first time. That happens to almost nobody. Because those managers know that they can get an experienced person. Why should they take an inexperienced one? So what you do is you start at a restaurant where you don't get tipped, and then you take that experience and go somewhere else where you do make tips and work your way up. I went from Skipper's to Sherry's as a hostess where you don't make tips to being a waitress where you do make tips. You know, and a good tipped waitress who's really good at what she does will probably make close to as much. Sometimes in some restaurants, in really nice restaurants, will make as much as the manager makes, but not have to work 70 hours a week. But that wasn't me. I never made that much money at it. I was good at it, but yeah, it was. I wound up making like about as much in tips as I made per hour, which at that time was like $7 an hour. So I made like $7 an hour in wages and $7 an hour in tips. But it depends on if it's busy or not. And when you work graveyard, it's not busy, so you don't make as much. So you try to get a good shift. Get those busy shifts when you can. But everybody's trying to get them too. You're not the only, you know. So that's, like I said, opportunity. Take those opportunities.
This smells a lot like raspberries.
Okay. All right. Okay. Answer these questions, okay? Ellis Island is now a museum, a
It's a
port, a
museum.
library, or a train station. Becky? Museum, that's right. Train
That's what I thought,
station.
too.
It's an island. The trains would have to like go across the bridge or under the water. Okay, next one. Why did most steamship passengers travel in steerage? Do you remember without the answers, Amy? Why did they pass steerage? Because it was the... That's right. Yep. Okay, that's okay. More Ellis Island immigrants came from what country than any other country? Do you remember, Rachel?
I forgot.
China.
Nope.
West Asia. Or
No.
Russia or something.
I
No,
know
totally wrong.
know what it is, but I just forgot the name.
Okay. Did it start with an S or an I? That's a hint. Is there S or I? Italy. Yeah, Italy. Is that what you were thinking of?
Yeah.
Good.
Use it.
Italy.
I.
Okay, listen. Becky, remember I said Italians. Okay?
But I thought
It wasn't Asia, Becky.
not April.
Becky, they didn't. Only very few Asian people came through outside. Most of them came through on the West Coast. I read that.
Oh, I must have gotten confused.
Yeah. Okay. Now listen. Okay. I think it's your dyslexia. Okay. Which of the following describes the job of an interpreter? To cook food? Does an interpreter cook food?
Nope.
Do they put words in one language from one language into another language?
One language to another language.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. What happened to immigrants who were deported, Becky?
They were sent back to their home country.
Or
That's
went to
right.
the
They went
hospital.
back to their own. Well, if they were deported, they went back to their home countries. There was this. If they were sick, they went to the hospital. If they were deported, they went to their home country. Ellis Island is located near what national monument, Rachel? Which one? Show me in the picture. This one, this one, this one, or this one? We talked about it. They were all looking at it. They said, "There she is. There she is." That's a boy. That's Mount Rushmore. Yeah, a statue of Liberty. That's right. Which of the following was not a use for Ellis Island at one time or another? A prison, an immigrant station, a courthouse, or a fort, Becky?
A person.
No, it says which one was not a use for Ellis Island at one time or another.
What?
Becky, they used it as a prison for a while during the war, after the war. They did use it for prison. Which of these is not a use for Ellis Island? Prison, immigration station, courthouse, or fort? It's like, which of these things does not belong? Was it a fort? Yeah, at one time it was a fort. Was it a prison? Yes, at one time it was a prison. Was it an immigration station?
Yeah.
Yes. What about a courthouse?
It was never a courthouse.
Yeah, it was never a courthouse. That's